Hi there, Cy Barron here from Sam Totnes. Thanks for joining me. Today what I want to do is talk about chord diagrams for learning guitar chords. Now the easiest way to learn the basic chords on the guitar is to see them in diagram form and to copy them with your hands on the guitar neck. But you need to know how to read these diagrams first of all. Now once you understand the basic idea, they're pretty simple to grasp. And you'll soon be up and running and learning all the chords you need to play all the songs you want to play. With the chords written in this form, you won't have to memorize all the shapes at once, but you can look back at the diagrams in order to remember them. So it's very useful to know how to read these diagrams. Now the diagrams show you where you put your fingers on the neck of the guitar and which frets to use, and which strings to pluck or fret, and which strings not to pluck or fret. All these basic chords can be easily represented, but the beauty of the system is that much more complicated chords can also be represented on the guitar neck, as well as the easier ones. And so learning these diagrams is not just useful for the beginner, but will also be useful throughout the time you play your guitar. Now, chord charts are actually more useful sometimes to represent music on the guitar than standard written music, and this is because the guitar being more of a fundamental instrument than say a piano, it's possible to play the same note in different places on the neck, and sometimes you need to know exactly where to play that note. For example, here there's an E note. You can also play exactly the same note here, this time on the 4th string and this time on the 5th string, but it's the same note. Now if that was represented on a normal musical staff, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference between whether to play here or here. That's where chord diagrams and tablature, which is another thing we can get into later, come in, because they show you exactly where to put your finger to get a certain note. Now chord diagrams are usually shown as a grid, 6 by 5. The 6 down lines are meant to be the 6 strings of the guitar neck, and the line on the farthest left is meant to show the thickest string, the low E, and then they go across as on the guitar. So you think of the diagram as looking down on the front of your guitar neck, like this. Now for all the beginner's chords, which are all on the first 3 frets, the diagrams are shown like this, and represent the first 4 or 5 frets on the guitar. This one shows the first 5 frets. Note that fret can mean the fret wire, the lines here running horizontally, or the space directly in front of the wire, the space where you put your finger. So if someone says put your finger on the 3rd fret of the 1st string, then you would put your finger here. Now the strings are numbered from high E to low E, 1 to 6. Starting from the high E at 1 and going down to the low E at 6. And the string note names are high E, B, G, D, A, and then low E. The thick line at the top of the grid is the bit on your guitar where the strings pass over the tuners to the neck. This is usually a piece of bone or plastic called the nut. Now the nut actually functions as a fret, and you can think of it as the 0 fret. All the starting chords you will learn have this nut at the top, because all the chords are held on the first 3 frets. When you progress, you might see chords represented which don't have the thick line at the top. These chords are formed higher up the neck of the guitar, and there will usually be a number at the side of the diagram to indicate which fret it is starting from, like this. So once we know what the grid represents, we can work out chord shapes from the dots on the grid. Here's a diagram of an E minor chord which shows the first 4 frets. E minor is the easiest chord you can play on the guitar. The dots tell you to place your fingers on the 5th and 4th string at the 2nd fret, like this. The numbers you see in the dots tell you which finger they think you should use. Now, this one tells you to use your 2nd and 3rd fingers, which is what I usually use for E minor. But here's another E minor diagram which tells you to use the 1st and 2nd fingers. Really, it's up to you to find out what's most comfortable, and that might be different depending on what music you're playing and which chord you're going to go to after the E minor chord. Sometimes the finger numbers will be shown under the strings, like this. Although the dots on the diagrams are generally placed in the middle of the fret, you want to place your fingers down as close to the fret wire as possible to get the best sound. Now the circles you see above the nut mean open. In other words, even though you are not fretting those strings, you still play them. For the E minor chord, you play all the strings regardless of whether you are fretting them or not. You can strum across all 6 strings and you get this sound. Sometimes you'll see a chord which has some X's instead of O's. This means that you're not supposed to play that string in that chord. Here we have a D chord diagram. As you can see, the 5th and 6th string have X's above them. So for the D chord, you don't play those strings. If you're strumming it, you'll just strum across the first 4 strings, 3 that are fretted with your fingers, and 1, the D string, that is open and unfretted. Now in the next video, we'll take a look at the first 3 basic chords. And now that you know about chord diagrams, you'll be able to pick them out on your guitar.